The great hall of the Galactic Assembly was filled with noise. Over 200 species had sent their representatives to Nexus Prime, the neutral station that floated between the stars. This was the annual Peace Summit, and diplomats from across the galaxy had gathered to discuss trade, borders, and the future of their civilizations. Ambassador Daniel Cole sat in the human section with his delegation. He was a tall man with gray hair and calm eyes. For 15 years, he had represented Earth in this assembly. He had learned to speak softly, to smile at insults, and to find common ground with creatures that breathed methane or communicated through colors. Today was supposed to be a simple day. The assembly was discussing shipping routes through the Outer Rim. Beside him sat Captain Megan Shaw, the military attaché assigned to protect the delegation. She was younger than Cole, with sharp features, and a kind of quiet confidence that came from years of service. Behind them sat 45 other humans, a mix of diplomats, advisors, security personnel, and scientists. The Tarani ambassador was speaking. His species looked like tall insects with 4 arms and compound eyes. He was complaining about tariffs on mineral exports. It was boring, and most of the assembly was only half listening. Then Daniel Cole's communication device buzzed. He looked down at it. The screen showed a priority alert from Earth Command, the highest level. His heart beat a little faster as he opened the encrypted message. For a moment, he did not move. His face went pale. His hands began to shake slightly. Megan Shaw noticed immediately. She leaned toward him. "Ambassador? What is it?" Cole did not answer. He forwarded the message to her device. She read it, and her expression changed. The calm professional mask she always wore cracked. Something cold and hard appeared in her eyes. Around them, other human devices began to buzz. One by one, the members of the delegation received the same message. The reaction spread like a wave. Humans who had been relaxed and bored suddenly became tense. Their breathing changed. Their postures shifted. The alien delegates closest to the human section began to notice. The Volthrani representative, a creature that looked like a floating jellyfish, changed colors in confusion. The Drothian ambassador, a massive being with stone-like skin, turned his heavy head to watch the humans. Commander Ryan Peters, the head of security, moved through the human section, speaking quietly to each person. His face was set like iron. Senator Lisa Carter, the political advisor, was already on her feet, gathering datapads and documents. The Tarani ambassador continued speaking, unaware that something was happening. But more and more alien eyes were turning toward the human delegation. Daniel Cole stood up. The movement was sudden enough that the Tarani stopped talking. The entire assembly fell silent. In all his years here, Ambassador Cole had never interrupted a session. He had never been rude. He had never raised his voice. Now he stood with his hands flat on the table in front of him. His face was calm, but there was something behind his eyes that the aliens had never seen before. It was something old, something dangerous. "Distinguished members of the assembly," Cole said. His voice was steady, but it carried across the silent hall. "I must apologize. The human delegation must leave immediately." Whispers spread through the assembly like wind through grass. The Krellian ambassador, a reptilian creature with scales that shifted from green to gold, leaned forward. "Ambassador Cole, this is most irregular. The session is not finished. What emergency could possibly require such a breach of protocol?" Cole looked at him. For a moment, he said nothing. Then he spoke 3 words that would echo through the galaxy for centuries to come. "They took children." The aliens did not understand. The Krellian tilted his head. "I do not follow. Who took children? What children?" But Cole was no longer listening. He nodded to Commander Peters, and the entire human delegation began to move. All 47 of them rose from their seats at the same moment. They gathered their belongings with quick, efficient movements. There was no panic, no confusion. They moved like a single organism. The alien delegates watched in shock. Some species had known humans for over a century. They had seen humans laugh, argue, negotiate, and celebrate. They had never seen this. The humans were not running away. They were not fleeing in fear. They were mobilizing. "Ambassador Cole!" The voice came from the Volmari delegate, a thin creature with large dark eyes and pale blue skin. "Please, explain yourself. What is happening?" Megan Shaw answered as she passed. Her voice was flat and cold. "A species called the Vrikari attacked our colony on New Haven 3 hours ago. They have taken over 10,000 of our people. Many of them are children." The name Vrikari sent a ripple of fear through the assembly. Several delegates made sounds of distress. The Vrikari were known throughout the galaxy. They were slavers, conquerors, destroyers of civilizations. They had existed for thousands of years, and no one had ever defeated them in war. The Tyranny ambassador spoke quickly. "The Vrikari? Ambassador Cole, you must be reasonable. The Vrikari have crushed entire empires. Their fleet is vast. Their technology is superior. You cannot possibly think to challenge them." Cole paused at the door. He turned back to face the assembly one last time. The other humans had already filed out, moving toward the shuttle bay with purpose in every step. "They have our children," Cole said simply. "There is nothing to discuss." He walked out. The assembly erupted into chaos. Delegates shouted questions. Communication devices flashed with urgent messages. The Krellian ambassador demanded order, but no one listened. In the observation deck above the main hall, old Counselor Zethari stood alone. He was ancient, even by the standards of his long-lived species. He had seen empires rise and fall. He had watched civilizations destroy themselves. He had studied humans since the day they first arrived in the galactic community. A young aide rushed to his side. "Counselor, what should we do? Should we try to stop them? Should we warn them about the Vrikari?" Zethari watched the empty seats where the humans had been sitting. His 4 eyes blinked slowly. "Warn the humans?" He said softly. "No, young one. The humans do not need our warnings. They know exactly what they are doing. But the Vrikari are terrible. They are monsters." Zethari turned to look at his aide. There was something strange in his expression. It took the young alien a moment to recognize it. It was fear. "The Vrikari are indeed monsters," Zethari said. "They have conquered and enslaved for millennia. But I have studied the humans. I have read their history. I know what they become when someone threatens their young." He looked back at the empty human section. "The Vrikari have made a terrible mistake. And now the galaxy will learn what happens when you take something precious from humanity." Outside, in the cold darkness of space, human ships were already powering up their engines. The fleet was coming together. And across the stars, a message was spreading from ship to ship, from station to station, from planet to planet. The children of Earth had been taken. And Earth was coming to get them back. The corridors of Nexus Prime had never seen humans move like this. They walked with long, quick steps. Their faces were hard. Their eyes were focused. They did not speak unless necessary, and when they did, their words were short and sharp. Ambassador Daniel Cole led the group toward the shuttle bay. Behind him, the 46 other members of the human delegation moved in tight formation. Security personnel had taken positions at the front and rear. Diplomats and scientists walked in the middle. No one had given orders for this arrangement. It had happened naturally, as if some ancient instinct had taken over. Alien delegates followed them through the corridors. The Volthrani representative floated beside Cole, his pale blue skin flickering with concern. "Ambassador, please. You must reconsider. I understand your pain, but the Vrikari cannot be defeated. They have destroyed species far more powerful than humanity." Cole did not slow down. "We are not trying to defeat them. We are going to rescue our people. But that is impossible. The Vakari homeworld is a fortress. Their slave compounds are protected by orbital defense platforms. No fleet has ever penetrated their space and survived. Then we will be the first. The Volthrani stopped walking. He stared at the retreating humans with something like horror in his large dark eyes. In the shuttle bay, human vessels were already warming up. Lieutenant Sophie Adams stood at a communication terminal, her fingers moving across the controls with practiced speed. She was young, barely 25, but she had trained for moments like this her entire career. "Ambassador," she called out as Cole approached. "I have Admiral Price on secure channel. He's waiting for you." Cole nodded and stepped toward the holographic projector. A moment later, the image of Admiral Nathan Price appeared. He was a broad-shouldered man with a shaved head and eyes that had seen too many battles. Behind him, the bridge of a warship was visible, filled with activity. "Daniel," the Admiral said. His voice was calm but tight. "You have heard the news." "I have." "What is our status?" "The fleet is mobilizing. We have 312 combat vessels converging on the Vakari border. Ground forces are loading onto transport ships as we speak. We will be ready to move in 6 hours. 6 hours. Cole closed his eyes for a moment. 6 hours was a miracle. 6 hours was impossible. But humans had always been good at doing impossible things when their families were in danger. "What do we know about the attack?" Cole asked. Admiral Price's expression darkened. "The Vakari hit New Haven at dawn, local time. They used a slave fleet, about 40 ships. Our colony defense force fought back, but they were overwhelmed. The Vakari took prisoners and retreated before our reinforcements could arrive." "How many?" 10,247 confirmed. "Were you still counting?" The Admiral paused. "Daniel, over 3,000 of them are children." The shuttle bay fell silent. Every human who heard those words felt them like a physical blow. 3,000 children. 3,000 sons and daughters, brothers and sisters, torn from their homes and taken by creatures who saw them as nothing more than property. Dr. Kevin Walsh, the xenobiologist attached to the delegation, stepped forward. His face was pale. "I have studied the Vakari. Their slave system is brutal. They separate families immediately. Children are raised in work camps, trained to serve. If we do not get them back quickly..." He did not finish the sentence. He did not need to. Captain Megan Shaw spoke for the first time since they had left the assembly hall. "What about the galactic community? Will anyone help us?" Admiral Price shook his head. "The assembly has already sent a formal message. They express sympathy, but will not provide military support. The Vakari are too dangerous, they say. They recommend we negotiate for the release of our people." "Negotiate?" Shaw's voice was cold. "The Vakari do not negotiate. They take. They conquer. They enslave. Everyone knows this." "Everyone knows this," Price agreed. "And everyone is too afraid to do anything about it." "Except us." Cole nodded slowly. "Then we go alone." "We go alone," the Admiral confirmed. "Our fleet will reach Vakari space in 18 hours. The enemy knows we are coming. They have already begun to fortify their positions." "Do they know how many ships we are bringing?" A small, grim smile appeared on Price's face. "They know. Their commander sent us a message an hour ago. He called our fleet impressive, but foolish. He said we would be destroyed, and our survivors would join the slaves we were trying to rescue." "And your response?" "I told him we would be there in 18 hours. I told him he had until we arrived to return every single human he had taken. Every man, woman, and child. If even one is missing when we get there, we will tear his empire apart." The hologram flickered. Behind Admiral Price, Officers were moving with urgent purpose. Ships were launching. Weapons were being loaded. The largest military operation in human history was taking shape. "Daniel," Price said, his voice dropping lower. "I need you to do something for me. Name it. Stay on Nexus Prime. Monitor the assembly. There are species out there who might help us, even if their governments will not. And if this goes badly..." He hesitated. "If we fail, humanity will need its diplomats more than ever." Cole wanted to argue. Every instinct in his body screamed at him to board a ship and join the fleet. But he knew Price was right. His place was here, watching, waiting, doing what he could from the political side. "I will stay," he said. "But Nathan, bring them home. Bring all of them home. I will, or I will die trying." The hologram disappeared. Around Cole, the human delegation began to split. Security personnel and military attaches boarded shuttles that would take them to the gathering fleet. Diplomats and civilian staff remained, their faces tight with worry and helpless anger. Senator Lisa Carter approached Cole. "Ambassador, the Assembly is demanding answers. They want to know what we are planning." "Let them watch," Cole said. "Let the whole galaxy watch. Let them see what happens when someone makes the mistake of threatening human children." Outside the station, human ships were jumping to faster-than-light speed, disappearing into the darkness one by one. They were heading toward a fight that everyone said they could not win. They were going to face an enemy that had never been defeated. But somewhere in Vakari space, 10,000 humans were waiting. 10,000 people who had been torn from their homes. 3,000 children who were crying for their parents. And humanity had made a promise, written in the very blood of their species. Since the first humans had walked the earth, no child left behind, no family abandoned, no matter the cost. The fleet was coming. And the Vakari were about to learn that some prey should never be hunted. The observation deck of Nexus Prime was crowded with alien delegates. They had gathered around the massive display screens that showed the movement of the human fleet in real time. Over 300 ships, moving in perfect formation through the void of space, heading toward Vakari territory. Counselor Zethari stood at the front of the crowd. His ancient body was tired, but his mind was sharp. He had watched many wars in his long life. He had seen species rise to power and fall to dust. But he had never seen anything quite like this. "This is madness," the Krellian ambassador hissed. His scales had turned a deep shade of red, a sign of distress in his species. "The humans are flying to their own destruction. The Vakari will crush them." "Perhaps," Zethari said quietly. "Or perhaps not." The Krellian turned to him sharply. "You cannot be serious. Look at the numbers. The Vakari have over 500 warships defending their home system. Their weapons are more advanced. Their shields are stronger. The humans are outnumbered and outmatched in every way." "In every way that you can measure," Zethari agreed. "But there are things that cannot be measured. Things that do not appear on tactical displays." The Tyranny ambassador joined them, his compound eyes reflecting the light of the screens. "What are you suggesting, Counselor? That the humans have some secret weapon?" "Yes," Zethari said. "They do. But it is not a weapon made of metal or energy. It is something far more dangerous." On the screens, the human fleet crossed into Vakari space. Warning signals appeared. The border defenses were tracking them. Enemy ships were moving to intercept. Aboard the flagship Resolute, Admiral Nathan Price stood on the bridge. Around him, officers worked with quiet efficiency. There was no panic, no fear. There was only focus. "Admiral," the tactical officer reported. "Vakari fleet is moving to engage. 517 vessels. They will intercept us in 4 hours." Price nodded. "Maintain course. All ships prepare for combat." The order went out across the fleet. On every ship, humans prepared for the battle ahead. Weapons were checked. Systems were tested. Last messages were sent to loved ones back home. In the Marine barracks of the transport ship Thunder, Sergeant Adam Brooks gathered his squad. They were young men and women, some barely out of training. They looked at him with trust in their eyes. "Listen up," Brooks said. His voice was calm and steady. "In a few hours, we are going to land on that planet. We are going to walk into the slave compounds where the Vakari are keeping our people. And we are going to bring them home." One of the Marines, a young woman named Private Jenny Ross, raised her hand. "Sergeant, the tactical reports say the enemy defenses are heavy. They say the compound walls are reinforced. How are we supposed to get through?" Brooks looked at her. He thought about his own daughter back on Earth. She was 7 years old. She had brown hair and a gap-toothed smile. He thought about the 3,000 children in those compounds, waiting for someone to rescue them. "We go through because we have to," he said simply. "Because there is no other choice. Those are our people in there. Our families. Our children. And we do not leave our own behind. Ever." The Marines nodded. They understood. Fear was still there, deep in their hearts. But something else was there too. Something stronger than fear. On the fighter deck of the carrier Vengeance, Pilot Officer Katie Morgan climbed into her spacecraft. She was one of the best pilots in the fleet. She had won dozens of combat simulations. But this was not a simulation. This was real. Her squadron gathered around her, 20 pilots waiting for orders. She looked at each of them in turn. "The transport ships are our priority," she said. "When the ground forces go in, we provide air cover. Nothing gets through to them. Nothing. If a Vakari ship so much as looks at our transports, we take it down." "Understood?" "Understood," they replied in unison. "Some of us might not come back from this," Morgan continued. Her voice did not shake. "But every minute we stay in the air is another minute for our people to get out. That is all that matters. The civilians. The children. That is why we are here." Back on Nexus Prime, the alien delegates watched the human fleet approach the enemy armada. The Vakari commander had broadcast a message to the galaxy, mocking the humans for their foolishness. He promised to add the entire human fleet to his collection of slaves. "This is painful to watch," the Volthrani delegate murmured. "The humans are brave, but bravery alone cannot defeat the Vakari." Councillor Zathari shook his head slowly. "You still do not understand. Let me tell you something about humans. I have studied their history. I have read their stories. They come from a world they call Earth. It is a harsh world, full of predators and disasters. Humans survived by working together, by protecting each other, by never giving up." He pointed at the screen, where the human fleet was now visible to the Vakari sensors. In their history, there was a time when a small group of human soldiers was surrounded by enemies. Thousands of enemies. The soldiers were asked to surrender. Do you know what they said? The delegates were silent. They said no. They fought. They died. But they did not surrender. And their sacrifice inspired their entire species. For thousands of years, humans have told that story. It is part of who they are. On the screens, the first Vakari ships opened fire. The battle had begun. "What you are watching," Zathari said softly, "is not a military operation. It is a rescue. And when humans are rescuing their children, they become something else entirely. They become unstoppable." The human fleet began to return fire. Explosions lit up the void. Ships on both sides took damage. But the humans kept coming. They did not slow down. They did not turn back. Admiral Price's voice came through the communication system, broadcast to the entire fleet. "All ships, this is the Admiral. Remember why we are here. Remember who we are fighting for. Push through, whatever it takes." The Vakari commander watched from his flagship as the human ships pressed forward through his defensive lines. His officers reported that the humans were taking losses, but they were not retreating. They were not even slowing down. For the first time in his long career, the commander felt something he did not recognize. It was doubt. On Nexus Prime, Counselor Zethari watched the battle unfold. The alien delegates around him were silent, their eyes fixed on the screens. "I once asked a human what they feared most," Zethari said quietly. "Do you know what he told me? He said he feared losing his family. He said he feared not being there to protect his children. He said that fear kept him awake at night." He turned to look at the other delegates. The Vakari have taken that fear and made it real for 10,000 human families. And now they will learn what happens when humans have nothing left to lose. On the screens, the human fleet broke through the first line of Vakari defense. The march to war continued. The battle space around the Vakari homeworld had become a storm of fire and metal. Human warships pushed through the enemy lines with terrible determination. The Vakari fought back with everything they had, but for every human ship they destroyed, 2 more took its place. On the bridge of the Resolute, Admiral Nathan Price watched the tactical display. Red icons marked enemy vessels. Blue icons marked his own fleet. The blue icons were slowly, steadily moving forward. "Admiral," his tactical officer reported, "we have broken through the outer defense ring. Transport ships are clear to begin descent." Price nodded. "Signal all transport commanders. Begin landing operations. Fighter squadrons, provide cover." Across the fleet, the order was received. Heavy transport ships loaded with Marines began their descent toward the planet below. Around them, fighter craft formed protective formations. Katie Morgan pushed her spacecraft forward through a wall of enemy fire. Her squadron followed close behind. A Vakari fighter crossed her path, and she destroyed it with a single shot. There was no time to think, no time to feel. There was only the mission. "Squadron, Titan formation," she ordered. Nothing gets through to the transports, nothing. Below, the surface of the Vakari homeworld grew larger. Morgan could see the slave compounds, massive structures of dark metal surrounded by walls and guard towers. Somewhere in those buildings were 10,000 humans waiting to be rescued. A Vakari gunship appeared from behind a cloud, firing at the nearest transport. Morgan reacted without thinking. She threw her fighter into the path of the enemy, firing her weapons in a continuous stream. The gunship exploded in a ball of flame. "Good kill, Commander," her wingman called out. But Morgan was already moving on to the next target. There was no time to celebrate. There was only time to fight. On the ground, the first transport ships landed outside the main slave compound. Ramps dropped open, and Marines poured out, weapons ready. Sergeant Adam Brooks led his squad toward the compound walls. "Move, move," he shouted. "First squad, breach the east gate. Second squad, secure the perimeter." The Vakari guards opened fire from the walls. Brooks dropped behind cover and returned fire. His shots were precise, aimed. One guard fell, then another dot around him. Marines advanced through the incoming fire. They used every piece of cover, every shadow, every moment of distraction. They had trained for this. They had prepared for this. But nothing could truly prepare you for the reality of combat. A Marine to his left took a hit and went down. Brooks grabbed her by the vest and pulled her behind a wall. "Medic," he yelled. "We have wounded." Private Jenny Ross appeared beside him, her medical kit already open. "I have her, Sergeant." "Keep moving." Brooks nodded and pushed forward. The east gate was ahead. A team of engineers was placing charges on the thick metal doors. The Vakari were firing down at them from above, but the Marines provided covering fire, keeping the enemy heads down. "Charge is set," an engineer called out. "Fire in the hole." The explosion shook the ground. The massive gates blew inward, revealing a dark corridor beyond. Brooks led his squad through the smoke and debris into the compound. Inside, the corridor split in multiple directions. Brooks consulted the tactical map on his wrist display. The holding cells were to the left. That was where the prisoners would be. "First squad with me," he ordered. "Second squad, hold this position. Do not let anyone follow us in." They moved through the corridors like ghosts, fast and quiet. The Vakari had not expected the humans to breach the walls so quickly. Most of the guards were still at their posts outside, fighting the Marines in the yard. Brooks reached the first holding cell and looked through the window. What he saw made his heart stop. Dozens of humans were crowded inside. Men and women, old and young. They looked up at the window with fear in their eyes. They had been told that no one was coming for them. They had been told that they belonged to the Vakari now. "Get back," Brooks said through the door. "We are going to get you out." He placed a small charge on the lock and blew it open. The door swung wide. The prisoners stared at him in disbelief. "Who are you?" a woman asked, her voice shaking. "United Earth Marines," Brooks answered. "We are here to take you home." Across the compound, similar scenes were playing out. Marines broke open cell after cell, freeing hundreds of prisoners. The people were weak, scared, and confused. But when they saw the human uniforms, when they heard human voices, they began to cry with relief. "This way," Marines shouted, guiding the freed prisoners toward the evacuation points. "Stay together. Stay calm. We are going to get you all out." In the children's section, Brooks found what he had been searching for. 3,000 children held in a separate building, guarded by Vakari soldiers who had been told to protect the most valuable merchandise. Those guards did not last long. Brooks kicked open the door to the children's dormitory and stepped inside. Rows of small beds filled the room. Children of all ages looked at him with wide, frightened eyes. "It is okay," Brooks said, lowering his weapon. His voice softened. "It is okay. You are safe now. We are going to take you back to your families." A little boy, no more than 5 years old, stood up from his bed. He was holding a small toy, clutched tight in his hands. "Are you really from Earth?" he asked. Brooks knelt down so he was at eye level with the boy. "Yes, we came a very long way to find you. All of you. They said no one would come," the boy whispered. "They said we belong to them now." Brooks reached out and put a gentle hand on the boy's shoulder. "They were wrong. You belong to no one but yourselves. And we will never stop coming for you. That is a promise." Outside, the battle raged on. Katie Morgan's squadron had lost 4 pilots, but they had kept the evacuation ship safe. Transport after transport lifted off from the compound, filled with rescued humans. They flew up through the atmosphere, through the storm of laser fire and explosions, toward the waiting fleet. On the Resolute, Admiral Price watched the numbers climb. 1,000 rescued, 2,000, 5,000, 8,000. "Admiral," a communications officer called out. "The Vakari flagship is moving to intercept the evacuation ships." Price looked at the display. The massive Vakari command ship was breaking through the battle lines, heading straight for the unarmed transports. "Not on my watch," Price said quietly. He turned to his helmsman. "Put us between that ship and the transports. All forward weapons, prepare to fire." The Resolute moved to intercept. It was one ship against the most powerful vessel in the Vakari fleet. The odds were not good, but as the Resolute took position, other human ships followed. One by one, they formed a wall between the enemy flagship and the fleeing transports. Damaged ships. Wounded ships. Ships that should have pulled back for repairs. They stood together, the Vakari commander looked at the wall of human vessels blocking his path. He ordered his flagship to fire. The human ships took hit after hit. Shields failed. Hulls cracked. Ships died, but they did not move. And behind them, the last transport ships carried the last rescued humans to safety. 10,247 people. Every single one. The human fleet limped back to Nexus Prime 3 days after the battle. 43 ships had been destroyed. Another 100 were badly damaged. Over 2,000 soldiers had given their lives in the rescue operation, but the transports were intact. And inside those transports, 10,247 humans were alive and safe. The galactic community watched in stunned silence as the battered fleet docked at the station. Alien delegates gathered at the observation windows, staring at the scarred and broken vessels that had done the impossible. Ambassador Daniel Cole waited at the main docking bay. He had not slept in 3 days. He had watched every moment of the battle from the observation deck, unable to look away, unable to do anything but wait and hope. When the first transport opened its doors, Cole felt his legs go weak. Families poured out. Men and women who had been torn from their homes were now returning to freedom. They looked thin and tired, but they were alive. They were safe. And then came the children. 3,000 boys and girls, walking in long lines, led by Marines who held their small hands. Some of the children were crying. Some were laughing. Some were so overwhelmed that they could only stare in wonder at the bright lights of the station. Cole watched a young mother run forward and catch her daughter in her arms. They held each other so tight it seemed nothing could ever separate them again. Beside them, a father fell to his knees and hugged his son, tears streaming down his face. These scenes repeated across the docking bay. Thousands of reunions. Thousands of moments of pure, overwhelming joy. Sergeant Adam Brooks walked off one of the last transports. He was carrying a small boy on his shoulders. The same boy who had asked if he was really from Earth. The boy's parents were waiting at the dock, and when they saw their son, they screamed his name. Brooks knelt down and let the boy run to his family. He watched them embrace, and for the first time in days, he allowed himself to smile. Private Jenny Ross appeared beside him. She had a bandage on her arm and exhaustion in her eyes, but she was grinning. "We did it, Sergeant. We actually did it." "Yeah," Brooks said quietly. "We did." An hour later, Ambassador Daniel Cole walked into the Galactic Assembly Hall. The room fell silent as he entered. Every delegate, every representative, every observer turned to watch him. Cole looked different than he had 3 days ago. His diplomatic suit was gone. He wore simple clothes, stained with smoke and dust from the rescue ships. His face was tired, but his eyes were clear. He walked to the podium at the center of the hall. For a long moment, he said nothing. He simply stood there, looking at the assembled delegates. 3 days ago, he began, his voice carrying across the silent hall. A species called the Vakari attacked a human colony. They took 10,000 of our people. They took our children. They thought we would do nothing. They thought we were weak. He paused, letting the words sink in. They were wrong. Murmurs rippled through the assembly. Cole continued. The Vakari have spent thousands of years conquering and enslaving. They have destroyed civilizations. They have crushed entire species. And in all that time, no one has ever stood against them. No one has ever fought back. His voice grew harder, stronger. Until now. The human fleet engaged the Vakari Armada in their own territory. We lost 43 ships. We lost over 2,000 soldiers. Good men and women who gave their lives so that others might live. He looked directly at the Krellian ambassador, who had warned him that the mission was impossible. But we rescued every single person. Every man. Every woman. Every child. All 10,247 of them. We left no one behind. The assembly was absolutely silent. Humanity does not seek war, Cole said. We do not want to conquer. We do not want to rule. We came to this galaxy hoping to find friends, allies, partners in building a better future. His expression darkened. But let me be clear. If anyone threatens our people, if anyone takes our children, if anyone makes the mistake of thinking that humans are prey, they will learn what the Vakari learned. They will learn that there is nothing more dangerous in this galaxy than a human protecting their family. He stepped back from the podium. That is all I have to say. For a long moment, no one moved. Then, slowly, Counselor Zethari rose from his seat. His ancient body trembled, but his voice was strong. For many years, he said, the species of this assembly have feared the Vakari. We have hidden from them. We have paid tribute to them. We have watched them destroy civilizations and done nothing. He turned to look at the human ambassador. Today, we witnessed something new. We witnessed a species that refused to accept what we had all accepted. A species that looked at the impossible and said, this is not impossible. A species that went to war not for territory or resources or power, but for love. He bowed his head toward Cole. The humans have taught us something today. They have taught us that courage is not the absence of fear. It is the decision that something else is more important than fear. Family is more important. Love is more important. The lives of innocent children are more important. Around the assembly, delegates began to nod. Some species that had mocked the humans days ago now looked at them with something approaching awe. On Earth, the celebrations lasted for weeks. The rescued colonists were returned to their families. The soldiers who had fought and died were honored as heroes. Admiral Nathan Price stood at the memorial for the fallen, reading the names of each person who had given their life. Sergeant Adam Brooks stood in the crowd, wearing his dress uniform. Beside him was the little boy he had carried off the transport, now reunited with his parents. The boy was holding a small flag, watching the ceremony with solemn eyes. Sergeant, the boy's father said quietly, I do not know how to thank you. You brought my son back to me. Brooks shook his head. You do not need to thank me. It is what we do. It is who we are. Later that night, Brooks sat alone on a bench outside the memorial. The stars were bright above him. Somewhere out there, in the vast darkness of space, were countless other species. Other civilizations, other beings looking up at the same stars. He thought about what Ambassador Cole had said in the assembly. Humanity does not seek war. That was true. But humanity would never run from a fight either. Not when their people were in danger. Not when their children needed them. A little girl ran past him, chasing a ball, laughing in the warm evening air. Her parents watched from nearby, smiling. Brooks smiled too. This was why they fought. This was why they flew across the galaxy into the guns of an enemy that had never been defeated. This was why 2,000 soldiers had given their lives, for the laughter of children, for the smiles of parents, for the simple, precious miracle of family. The galaxy had watched in terror as humans rushed from the assembly. They had expected to see humanity destroyed. Instead, they had witnessed something far more frightening. They had witnessed what humans become when someone threatens the ones they love, and the galaxy would never forget.